It's been a while since I did my last low-budget binge. The summer season seems to be full of horror movies deserving of their own videos, but I still make time to check out more independently made terrors like the 6 lo-fi treats I have for you today. Let's start binging. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Maneater is new on-demand and digital download from Saban Films. It's directed and written by Justin Lee. When a large great white shark begins hunting outside of its usual feeding area, it ends up eating the wrong surfer. That surfer happens to be the daughter of tough guy shark hunter Harlan, played by country singer Trace Atkins. But the recent shark attacks haven't stopped a group of vacationers from chartering a party boat. When the shark sets sights on the partiers, including League of Extraordinary Gentlemen's Shane West and Halloween 2's Nikki Whalen, Harlan sets out to save the group from its chomping jaws of death. It seems everyone is making a shark film these days. Hell, even I wrote one. Sharkwaters. Rent it now. I can understand the allure of the shark film and those who love them. Basically, we've killed off most of the horrifying predators out there, and given our love of beaches, it seems a no-brainer to turn this vacation destination into a place of pure and primal terror. It also gives the film a chance to sport some well-toned bodies in tiny swimwear. Maneaters delivers on both. The gals are fit and barely clothed, and everyone who even gets near the water is in danger of having an up-close and personal tour of a shark's intestinal tract. Maneater is a somewhat typical shark movie. The CG is okay. The underwater scenes where the shark torpedoes through the water at the vacationers looks nice and deadly, and there's a sizable amount of gore above and under the water. There's also quite a big kill count, so on the surface level, Maneater capably delivers the basics. The problem with Maneater is that though many people are chomped by this shark, the kills are very repetitive, and the characters are rarely given enough time to be developed before they become chum. It seems Maneater is going by the motto of having a kill every 3 or so minutes, so there are tons of random scenes of the shark simply feasting on nameless swimmers happening in between the dramatical beats. The beginning wastes no time to simply have a guy swimming through the water and then he gets eaten. Who is this guy? No clue, but it gives the film a death before the credits, so that's all that matters. Unfortunately, since we don't even know all of the vacationers of the group, their deaths have very little resonance. Even when some of the main characters with actual lines encounter the shark, it's quick and then it moves on to the next kill. The final act has the vacationers devastated down to 1 or 2 people in such a rapid clip that I think I missed a few of them. When the film doesn't care to get to know the characters before killing them, how's the viewer supposed to? Trace Atkins is decent enough as the grizzled shark hunter who's out to get some vengeance with the shark. Why he thinks this is the shark that did in his baby girl is beyond me, but he plays the part decently. It's also great to see actor Branscombe Richmond, who was a cast member of the show Renegade, which I used to watch and I don't know why. He plays the sheriff who wants to help but is still stifled by the need to preserve the vacation business of the islands. And hey, it's always good to see Jeff Fahey. I don't hate the time I spent with Maneater, and if you're a fan of lo-fi shark movies, I doubt you will either. Director Justin Lee, who directed Big Legend, which I liked a whole lot more, seems only concerned with showing a shark attack every few minutes, and it was successful in doing that. The deaths meant nothing to me, and the tension was never really even attempted, but Maneater's got a high kill count going for it, and that's about it. Of the Devil is new on-demand and digital download from Uncork'd Entertainment and Dread Central. It's directed by Kelton Jones and written by James Cullen Bressack and Kelton Jones. After their son Alex, played by Lucas Sequeira, is diagnosed with a brain tumor, his parents, Ben and Norma, played by Jonathan Stoddard and Daniela Pallavicino, desperately try to find a cure for him. But when medical science fails them, they take Alex to Mexico to get some more radical and unconventional treatment. But the methods used by the witch doctor, played by Robert Lasardo, seem to kill Alex. Returning home, Alex miraculously awakens, seemingly fine, but soon begins acting strangely, as if some kind of evil force has entered his body. After much turmoil and paranormal events, Ben and Norma take Alex to a priest, played by Vernon Wells, in hopes to save his soul. While there are some shocking moments, Of the Devil feels like a very typical possession film. I think everyone behind and in front of the camera are giving their all, but with possession movies, you're taking on a Sisyphean task of distinguishing oneself from the greatest horror movie of all time, The Exorcist. Of the Devil doesn't try to do this too much, but it does have Eileen Dietz, who played the part of the demon in The Exorcist, in it. The story does take a few unconventional turns and has a few scenes that end up being quite shocking. I appreciate that James Cullen Bressack, who has written and directed scores of lo-fi horror films from Jennifer to Blood Lake, does with the script. He fills it with one strange event after another, including a chilling scene where it's evident that the suspicions of the parents are solidified when Alex does a mass sacrifice in the backyard. Actors Jonathan Stoddard and Daniela Pallavicino are quite talented and decently carry the dramatic heft of dealing with the son with a tumor and then a stolen soul. The small cameos are always great. Robert Lasardo and Road Warrior's Vernon Wells are nice to see, though they feel like stunt casting of people playing themselves rather than actual key players in the story. Even little Lucas Seguera does a decent job as the possessed kid. But that doesn't save this film from landing with a plop of a climax. While it's supposed to be a shockaroo, the appearance of a certain horned fallen angel in the final moments just feels hokey. While it shoots for the moon, Of the Devil feels more like a collection of good ideas sealed together with cheap glue. You've got to be pretty amazing to be a possession film that stands out, and Of the Devil just doesn't hack it. The Ghost Lights, its new on-demand and digital download from Terror Films, is directed and written by Timothy Stevens. After absent-mindedly missing her own father's funeral, Alex, played by Katriva Phillips, returns to the home of her father Brian, played by Ryan Bayan, and discovers a tape recorder labeled The Ghost Lights. Eager to hear her lost father's voice and sniffing an interesting story, the young journalist decides to follow the trail and try to complete her father's investigations into strange lights that appear in the West Texas skies. But the closer Alex gets, the stranger things get, including a man in black, played by Timothy Stevens, who is following her everywhere. The Ghost Lights is a very slow drama with horror and sci-fi elements. I wouldn't say it's the most thrilling of films. Much of the time is spent with Alex driving in her car or sitting around in her hotel listening to her father's tapes. The rest of the time is spent in flashback with her father Brian interviewing an eyewitness, played by Billy Blair, in a bar. There are moments of intrigue and tension as a man in black pursues Alex on her journey to find the ghost lights, but the bulk of the film is dialogue heavy. And that's fine. Most of the interview portions are interesting enough, kind of reminded me a bit of Session 9. Being a fan of UFO and paranormal phenomena, I have listened to plenty of interviews of eyewitnesses to all kinds of strange events, and I guess that's going to be the target audience of this low-budgeter. There are a few X-Files-esque scenes where Alex runs away from the man in black, but unfortunately these scenes aren't anything different than something one has seen many times before. What distinguishes this film from the rest are the performances by both Katriva Phillips and Ryan Behan, as father and daughter investigators separated by time. While reminiscent of the short Father's Day segment in the anthology Holidays, I was wrapped up in this drama unfolding as Alex tries to retrace her father's steps in the investigation. Both actors do a good job of commanding the attention of the viewer, and it's the strength of Alex's conviction to get to the truth that kept my interest going. There's a strong emotional core to The Ghost Lights that is its most accomplished factor. It's a story of a daughter seeking solace in the death of her father and her willingness to do anything to accomplish that. The effects are decent as well, effectively communicating the strange titular phenomena, even though they are minimally used. Pack a big bag of patience, and you might find yourself digging this dramatically heavy, yet horror and sci-fi light thriller. Camping Trip is new on demand and digital download from Gravitas Ventures. It's directed by Demian Fuica and Leonardo Fuica, and written by Leonardo Fuica. A pair of couples go on a camping trip towards the end of the pandemic lockdown, but the place they have decided to pitch their tents in is near an illegal exchange between a doctor with the cure for the virus and a couple of backwoods thugs in need of cash. When the drop goes sideways, the doctor is killed, but not before he hides the money in the camper's tent, directing the swarthy thugs in the camper's direction. I was expecting a slasher flick from the misleading poster of Camping Trip, with camping being the target recreation of most slasher films and a poster of a man with a knife standing in front of a tent. I don't think I was off in thinking so. But instead, I got a moral tale set in a very special time about how money can corrupt absolutely. It's fine that this film turned out to be something I didn't expect, but I do think that there are issues with Camping Trip. But first, I'll give it a few compliments. Camping Trip is very slickly produced. There are some really impressive drone shots. The scenes are smoothly and crisply edited. Overall, this is a good-looking movie. The acting is solid as well. Both the hoods and the campers do their jobs well. The campers have quick banter and react comfortably with one another. There are interesting relationships developed, and these aren't cookie-cutter roles. This is something you usually don't get in a film of this sort, and I do appreciate that. I also think that the script had a few unexpected twists and turns that I found to be pretty surprising. From the reason why the campers are there in the first place to the bloody climax where all hell breaks loose. The thing is, Camping Trip is utilizing old-school grindhouse elements. The plot feels like something that might have shown up in a gritty, low-scale action survival flick from the mid-'70s. The bad guys are sleazy and gross, and once the money gets involved, the campers even become pretty deplorable. But because the film is so cleanly and crisply produced, the look of Camping Trip just doesn't match the tone of the story. I wish this film would have been a little bit grimier and darker. There's an assault on the campers that is mainly done off-screen, but if you're going to go there to that level of deplorable action, you can't just shy away from showing it. The film seems to want to take the credit of having horrible things happening, but doesn't want to actually show their work. Not that I want to see sexual assault, but if you put it in your movie and then pan away, why did you put it in there in the first place? I also think that Camping Trip is going to be a tough pill to swallow because it chooses to acknowledge the pandemic. Yes, it serves as a central plot point, but I can only speak for myself, but I'm pretty sick of being reminded of having to wear masks and all of the other things that we've all gone through over the last couple of years. I go to horror to escape that sort of thing. I think this is a simple case of too soon, unfortunately, since I think this film could have been made without even mentioning the modern plague. So while there are elements of survival films like Deliverance and aspects of I Spit on Your Grave, Camping Trip felt more like a gratuitous version of Sam Raimi's excellent A Simple Plan. There is a moral lesson at play, but I do feel the way this film is presented is a detriment to it. Had there been a little more grit and stank on Camping Trip, I think I would have appreciated it a whole lot more. Killer Whales is new on demand in digital download from Gravitas Ventures. It's directed by Willow Hamilton and written by Wyatt Bunce. A rookie filmmaker named Donnie Wonder, played by the film's writer, Wyatt Bunce, attempts to make a documentary about the death of an influencer who was murdered in his bathtub. With a handful of suspects, but no experience making a movie, the film's producer pairs Wonder with an embittered yet experienced director named Francis Falcone, played by Greg Vrostos. In order to solve the case, the two filmmakers must work together and try not to kill one another. While there is a dead body in a bathtub and the use of quite a large amount of fake blood in the reenactments, Killer Whales is less of a horror film and more of a dark comedy mockumentary. All of the players, which also include Barry's Michael Cognata as a goth poet and also a suspect, do a decent job of bringing these over-the-top characters to life. While the ridiculousness is amplified to the max, writer Bunce and his director Willow Hamilton make this a compelling swipe at documentary filmmaking, which seems to be all the rage these days. The reenactments Falcone sets up are trippy and over the top, yet somehow fit right in with the documentary feel of the film. Some of the best scenes in Killer Whales are the pressure-fueled back and forthings between Wonder and Falcone. Falcone is doing this job because of a court order, while this is a passion project for Wonder. Seeing their two styles collide is over-the-top fun. One director is wizened and jaded with many a film in his resume, the other a noob who has never made a film, yet eagerly puppy dogs behind Falcone for inspiration and notes. As the intensity of the film ratchets up, the conflict between these two styles of filmmaking is ripe for comedy. Kind of like the tension built between Zach Penn and Werner Herzog in the excellent Incident at Loch Ness. Not all of the jokes land. There are some very wincy moments where it seems Bunce plays a second role as an old lady, which works sometimes and other times not so much. The film also doesn't really have an ending that matches the level of craziness it reaches midway through, leaving things to end with more of a plop than a smash. Still, I laughed quite a bit at Killer Whales, which was put together by some high-class comic talent with a very dark sense of humor. Finally, we have Surrogate, new on demand and digital download from Indie Rights. The director is David Willing, and it's written by Beth King and David Willing. After an unfortunate encounter with a crazy lady at a gas station where she must administer CPR, Nurse Natalie, played by Kesti Morasi, returns home with stomach pains. Though she makes sure her daughter Anna, played by Louise Siverson, is well cared for, Natalie continues to experience stomach pains until she wakes up in a bed full of blood. Rushed to the hospital, the doctors explain that Natalie shows signs that she has recently given birth. The problem is that there is no baby, and Natalie didn't show signs of pregnancy. This explanation doesn't sit well with the doctors and social worker Lauren, played by Jane Badler, who begins investigating into Natalie's life. When Anna begins showing bruises that are given to her by a mysterious girl who visits her in the night, Lauren becomes concerned, thinking that Natalie is abusing her. Meanwhile, a strange entity seems to be forming an attachment with Natalie and a strong jealousy towards Anna. So yeah, there's an awful lot of complex motherhood issues going on. I have to give it to this film for exploring a rather strange and unique paranormal experience. There are shades of the Babadook going on with the film dealing with the pressures of being a mother under heavy stress, though in this case the stress is from both social services and a strange unknown entity. Though it's not the same, Surrogate reminded me more of The Entity, where Barbara Hershey develops a very unromantic relationship with a horny ghost. In both films, a woman's sanity and well-being as a mother are called into question by the authorities. We often think of ghosts as vengeful spirits or shapeless shadows, but thinking of the paranormal entities as actually having unhealthy feelings is an avenue rarely explored. That makes this story stand out from most ghost stories. Unfortunately, past the premise, things get very familiar fast as Natalie becomes a junior detective uncovering the seedy history behind the entity that is haunting her and believing she is its mother. I understand uncovering the mystery is key to the story, but seeing a haunted woman looking through answers with priests, mediums, libraries, and taking things into her own hands to venture through abandoned buildings is just cliched in this day and age. There's quite a lot of visceral gore in Surrogate, as quite a bit of carnage is unleashed upon Natalie's body during her short pregnancy possession. While I wasn't really impressed by the orange Alka-Seltzer effect that those afflicted with the paranormal entity show, it's just not very impressive. The scenes where Natalie is on the operating table is much more gruesome. Kesti Morasi conveys these complex emotions of dealing with an unwanted pregnancy, as well as the pressures of motherhood very well, making her a very sympathetic character to follow. All in all, though there are some beats that will seem familiar, Surrogate is different enough and made capably enough to feel pretty fresh and entertaining despite its ultra-bleak ending.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside